a very special Independence Day edition of Dispatches. I'm your host, Brady Kreitzer. Our guest today is author and Journal of the American Revolution contributor Ray Raphael, and he'll be discussing the evolution not just of the Declaration of Independence, but the several dozen declarations of independence and iterations of them that occurred in the years leading up to 1776. Ray, welcome back to the program.
Well, I'm always pleased to be talking with the JAR folks, and I've been part of the team since the get-go, and I just love the journal, and it's formed a venue for a community, which is really special, and we all live in with one, so one leg in the modern world and one leg back then, and it's just a pleasure to be communicating with like-minded folks.
Ray, as you've mentioned, you've been around here at the Journal of the American Revolution since the inception, really since day one. Tell us a little bit about your background for those who don't know you.
Okay, well, my background is I'm not a studied scholar. I didn't major in college. I don't have a PhD in it, but I was actually working on some curriculum for across the board critical thinking curriculum, and I was experimenting. How would this work for a history text, and how would this work? And so I tried it out with the American Revolution, and so I got deeper and deeper and deeper. And as many of you know, once you get get your feet wet, your toes wet in the American Revolution, sometimes you're just going to sink in. Anyway, I entered late 18th century America about close to 20 years ago, and I have never fully returned. And I have 10 books on the subject and people's history. The first one was the breakthrough is the people's history of the American Revolution. And I am a bottom-up historian. I came of age during the peace and civil rights movement and was very active in SNCC, a grassroots organization. And I see history from the bottom up personally, experientially, and that helped me see basically how history has always been shaped from the bottom up, and how sad and tragic it is that that has not been incorporated into mainstream narratives.
Okay, so we are talking on July 4th. This episode will be released July 5th, but take our word for it. We are. Ray, let's just maybe broadly say, what made you want to write this particular article when you did?
Well, when I did is I've I've always been, all my books really deal with extending the story beyond the few famous men. The idea that there's just this handful of great thinking aristocrats who kind of formed the country, magically by their magical beauty of their thought. And I've never seen it that way. And in doing my research, I came across Pauline Maier's amazing book, American Scripture, in which case where she documents 90 declarations of independence that preceded the Declaration of Independence. So actually, I really ingested that book and incorporated it and became very close with Pauline because of it. And so I really wanted to, actually, personal note, I did become very close with her. And when she died, I basically conceived this article as a tribute to Pauline and the work that she did in American Scriptures to highlight, because she's not around. She'd be right. She would have written this article, you see. So I said, well, she can't do it. I'll do it. So anyway, that's the background. And then also another item is I've been focusing a lot of my research in the years before, in the period before that. You see, these 90 declarations that she features, they were all written in just a few months preceding basically the late spring of 1776. And in my own research for the People's History of the American Revolution, I came across a declaration in favor of independence that preceded that by a year and a half. It was actually on October 4th, 1774, the people of Worcester, Massachusetts, basically declared in favor of independence. I mean, I saw, I kind of got wind that there was some kind of event happening in Worcester. And so I went to the archives in Worcester, which happened to be in Worcester, the Antiquarian Society, and came across this journal which documented basically the overthrow of the British Crown authority in September 6th of 1774, where half the adult male population of Worcester County showed up in 37 militia units in one day to unseat the British authority Crown-appointed judges there. And the issue was not the Boston Tea Party, it was the Massachusetts Government Act. It revoked the Constitution. So basically, from that day on, the people of Worcester were governing themselves. And this was just a few weeks later, they were going to form a provincial Congress. And so the delegate from Worcester was instructed by his people, by his townsmen, at that provincial Congress, I'm going to read this exactly what they told that delegate to do. Let's see. You are to consider the people of this province absolved on their part from the obligation therein contained. That was the old charter, their charter that gave them a lot of rights and had been yanked away. And to all intents and purposes reduced to a state of nature. And you are to exert yourself in devising ways and means to raise from the dissolution of the old Constitution, as from the ashes of the phoenix, a new form, wherein all officers shall be dependent on the suffrages of the people, whatever unfavorable constructions our enemies might put upon such a procedure. So they were ready to just form a new government based on the people. And that was 21 months to the day before the Congressional Declaration. So now, getting back to Pauline's research, she documents all these ones where the basic. You have to understand how the structure of government was here was very different than it was in Britain. In Britain, you would elect people, and basically they were delegates. You delegated authority to them, and then they made up their mind what to do. And here it was a different concept. And here it's more representative, and so you are to represent the will of the people. So all these early declarations that Pauline discovered, they are instructions to their delegates to the next level, the higher body, to basically declare independence. So, like the town would instruct the county or the provincial government, and then the provincial government would then instruct their delegates to the constitutional, to the convention, to the Continental Congress. And so that's what it was. It was bottom up, totally from the beginning. The people were instructing their delegates to higher bodies to go for independence. Compare that with the standard narrative that we have, which is, these very smart guys are dreaming it up, and here's what they come up with. And Thomas Jefferson must have just been a genius to do it. And then, a lot of people say, in our circles, Journal of the American Revolution circles, people know that there was the great similarity between that declaration and the Virginia Declaration of Rights, which George Mason drafted. And so, Jefferson was not working in a vacuum, but it was more powerful. The bottom up part was more powerful than that, because even the Virginia Declaration was actually instructing the Virginia delegates to vote, and so the whole process was that the people were ready, and they were already practicing a basically representative government, and it was a revolutionary idea, and that revolutionary idea implemented became the actual American Revolution.
Ray, you detail in your article a variety of these miniature or preliminary declarations. Massachusetts has quite a few. Tell us about those declarations, How were they similar? But I think more interestingly, how were they different?
Um, their declarations were different because of the variety within the American population. And so within the each town in Massachusetts, it's like whatever whatever those folks wanted to say then, and it's going to be there's some similarities and some differences. But what I really really get a kick out of is it was a chance for everybody to sort of express, to engage in rhetoric, in flamboyant rhetoric. And so, as I say, there are going to be there'll be differences within each one, and you'd have to read them all. By the way, American Scripture, okay, that's the book. Get it from Amazon or your library or something. But the thing is, Pauline actually, she summarizes a lot of it. And so what I did is I said, of course, it's well referenced. So I went back and actually looked on the American Archives site, the Force site, and you can actually go back, follow her footnotes, and they will take you back to all the originals. I'm going to read one here. Let me find it. This is the New York. Wait. Where is it? Okay, this is the New York Mechanics. It's called the Mechanics of New York, and it was basically kind of a trade organization of people who work with their hands. So these, by definition, these are kind of common people. They're not the wealthy aristocratic classed plantation owners of the South, but they wanted to have their say. And remember that they're just ordinary mechanics. When we cast a glance upon our beloved continent, where fair freedom, civil and religious, we have long enjoyed, whose fruitful fields have made the world glad, and whose trade has filled with plenty of all things, sorrow fills our hearts to behold her now struggling under the heavy load of oppression, tyranny, and death. But when we send our sight a little farther and view the iron hand that is lifted up against us, behold, it is our king. He who has, by his oath and station, is bound to support and defend us in the quiet enjoyment of all our glorious rights as freemen, and whose dominions have been supported and made rich by our commerce. Shall we any longer sit silent and contentedly continue the subjects of such a prince, who is deaf to our petitions for interposing his royal authority in our behalf, and for redressing our grievances, but on the contrary, seems to take pleasure in our destruction? When we see that one whole year is not enough to satisfy the rage of a cruel ministry, in burning our towns, seizing our vessels, and murdering our precious sons of liberty, making weeping widows for the loss of those who are dearer to them than life, and helpless orphans to bemoan the death of an affectionate father, and for no other reason than this, that they will not become their slaves and be taxed by them without our consent. And anyway, so that's you see, they really get down and dirty into the nitty gritty of it. And this is what I love about that is they is just the power of the emotion and the joy that they take in fully expressing that emotion. I mean, these guys got a kick out of writing that. And they got a kick out of it because they really expressed who they were. Now, one thing you have to remember here, like in terms of the timing, these are done in the late spring of 1776. We have been at war with the mother country for over a year. That's the background for this war for over a year, and so there's a political reason for all this. I mean, should we get into that, or do you want to have another question first?
Let's go for it.
Okay, I guess I'm on a roll here. Okay, politically, it's over 1,000 soldiers have been killed. The towns have been burned. I mean, it's been a full-on warfare for a year, and the United States financing this thing is very problematic, and they would like some help. Well, Britain has some natural historic enemies over on the other side of the Atlantic, France and Spain, but we can never get help from them if we are a British colony. I mean, Britain is not going to get involved in a dispute within two groups in France. That's just not the way it worked. So, in order to receive any support from France or Spain, we need to establish ourselves as a separate entity. So that's to the simple political basis of all this thing. I mean, and all the rhetoric is fine, but there's a very real reason, physical and commercial, financial, for doing this. Now, this is, all this seems so obvious, and the passion of the people is so obvious, and it just seems a shame, in my mind, to reduce the narrative to these precious few men who have gotten together and sort of drafted this very nice document. It's very eloquent. Mason's draft was very eloquent. Jefferson was not really an author so much as an editor. His if you read the Mason the Virginia Declaration of Rights, which Mason was basically based on his draft, and then read the final declaration. The Declaration reads a lot better, but it's nothing new. There's absolutely no new concepts, and so it just seems strange that we celebrate basically the editor, and not the author, or in this case the authors who were the people. And so it's I don't know. That's if I feel a little bit overblown on all this thing, it's because I am. I just believe passionately that history is made by people.
Ray, could you talk about some of the disparities up and down the eastern seaboard? We see the Mecklenburg Declaration coming out of North Carolina. We see the Hannistown Resolves coming out of Westmoreland County in western Pennsylvania. We see, as you read about South Carolina in your article, were these all more or less saying the same things? Were there regional differences? How do you interpret that?
I don't think there were. I don't think there was substantive differences. I think they were largely differences in style, like and who was writing them. There was a grand jury report in South Carolina, which is very eloquent, and we could read it if we want. But it's in. If you want to read these, it's in my article in the journal, so you can all read them all. Just you're a JAR audience, so just open the article and you read them for yourselves. But the difference there is who is serving on a grand jury in South Carolina, right? Who's going to be serving there? It's going to be a bunch of plantation owners, and they have their own thing going and their own interests and their own style. And so they're going to do it in their style, and New England more in their style. Within New England, it's I don't see any real substantive differences. It's really a difference of expression, and those differences really pale by the similarities of both substance and emotion. People. This was imagine. I mean, put yourself in that time. I mean, my gosh, it's so all-encompassing. The world that they live in is just literally going up in flames, and they've got to. I mean, it's just a necessity at this point. It's an absolute necessity. There's no choice. There's no choice, particularly for the people in New England who have been experiencing warfare on their own turf for a year. I mean, people actually ask, when did the Massachusetts Revolution join the American Revolution? And that's not the way it happened. It happened. The revolution itself. The American Revolution started in the fall of 1774. That's when the people of Massachusetts, everywhere outside of Boston, 95% of the population overthrew British rule. They kicked all the British authorities out. The courts were closed. There was no British presence. And then they formed their own provincial Congress, which passed its rules. It taxed its people. It formed an army. This is happening in 1770, in the late winter and spring of 1770, late spring 74, and then the spring of 1775. Then the war starts when Britain tries to, the king tries to take that colony that it lost back. I mean, it was basically 95% of Massachusetts. It was outside of Boston. And other than Boston and Salem, that was all that the British controlled. They tried to take it back. We have Lexington and Concord. Okay, now there's already a Massachusetts army formed to deal with this. After Lexington and Concord, the New England colonies join. You know, they say, okay, we're with you too, and so that becomes kind of the Rhode Island and Connecticut join, and then of course the Continental Congress joins as well later that year, 75, and so we have a full war, and we've been waging war for over a year, and what are people going to do? Of course, they're going to declare independence. I mean, it's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah. So, Ray, we always like to end with this question. It gets to the heart of what we do as historians. How do you think this article helps us understand the Revolutionary Era better?
Well, what I would hope is that it would actually inspire people to look more deeply than the few, you know, of the writings of the famous men, the Continental Congress, and so on. And I would hope that it would inspire people to realize that that's not how history happens. It certainly is not how history. It might have been in the days of I don't know, medieval days or something where there really was that kind of power. But the power of the United States is that from the get-go of that era, power was in the hands of the people. And the revolution was a realization and kind of a formalization of that. The people were saying, yes, we are our own people. We are not going to be ruled from afar. And it was a great event. It was a great example. And it's no accident that revolution has inspired a worldwide revolution. The worldwide revolution. We were instigators in kind of the people's liberation of here and elsewhere internationally from arbitrary, I don't know, but of basically top-down rulership. And we paved the way. So the people, you know, you guys, guys and gals in the Journal of the American Revolution, you're not wasting your time hanging around this era. You know, it was a world-shattering event era, and within that, the revolution was a world-shattering event, and within that, the declarations, plural, please, of independence were world-shattering and did just like the shot heard round the world. These were the declarations that heard round the world.
Excellent. Well, Ray Raphael, thank you again so much for joining us.
Thanks for giving me a chance to talk with our folks here.